Section 38 of Villette by Charlotte Bronte. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Leanne Fortune, Section 38. To wonder sadly, did I say? No, a new influence began to act upon my life, and sadness, for a certain space, was held at bay. Conceive a dell, deep hollowed in forest secrecy. It lies in dimness and mist, its turf is dank, its herbage pale and humid. A storm or an axe makes a wide gap amongst the oak trees. The breeze sweeps in, the sun looks down, the sad cold dell becomes a deep cup of lustre. High summer pours her blue glory and her golden light out of that beauteous sky, which till now the starved hollow never saw. A new creed became mine, a belief in happiness. It was 3 weeks since the adventure of the garret, and I possessed in that case box drawer upstairs, casketed with that first letter, 4 companions like to it, traced by the same firm pen, sealed with the same clear seal, full of the same vital comfort. Vital comfort it seemed to me then. I read them in after years. They were kind letters enough, pleasing letters, because composed by one well pleased. In the 2 last there were 3 or 4 closing lines, half gay, half tender, by feeling touched, but not subdued. Time, dear reader, mellowed them to a beverage of this mild quality, but when I first tasted their elixir, fresh from the fount so honoured, it seemed juice of a divine vintage, a draught which he might fill, and the very gods approve. Does the reader, remembering what was said some pages back, care to ask how I answered these letters, whether under the dry, stinting check of reason, or according to the full, liberal impulse of feeling? To speak truth, I compromised matters. I served 2 masters. I bowed down in the houses of Rimmon, and lifted the heart at another shrine. I wrote to these letters 2 answers, one for my own relief, the other for Graham's perusal. To begin with, Feeling and I turned reason out of doors, drew against her bar and bolt. Then we sat down, spread our paper, dipped in the ink an eager pen, and, with deep enjoyment, poured out our sincere heart. When we had done, when 2 sheets were covered with the language of a strongly adherent affection, a rooted and active gratitude, once for all, in this parenthesis, I disclaim, with the utmost scorn, every sneaking suspicion of what are called warmer feelings. Women do not entertain these warmer feelings where, from the commencement, through the whole progress of an acquaintance, they have never once been cheated of the conviction that to do so would be to commit a mortal absurdity. Nobody ever launches into love unless he has seen or dreamed the rising of hope's star over love's troubled waters. When, then, I had given expression to a closely clinging and deeply honouring attachment, an attachment that wanted to attract to itself and take to its own lot all that was painful in the destiny of its object, that would, if it could, have absorbed and conducted away all storms and lightnings from an existence viewed with a passion of solicitude, then just at that moment the doors of my heart would shake, bolt and bar would yield, reason would leap in vigorous and revengeful, snatch the full sheets, read, sneer, erase, tear up, rewrite, fold, seal, direct, and send a terse, curt missive of a page. She did write. I did not live on letters only. I was visited. I was looked after. Once a week I was taken out to La Terrasse. Always I was made much of. Dr. Bretton failed not to tell me why he was so kind. To keep away the nun, he said. He was determined to dispute with her prey. He had taken, he declared, a thorough dislike to her, chiefly on account of that white face-cloth and those cold grey eyes, the moment he heard of those odious particulars, he affirmed. Consummate disgust had incited him to oppose her. He was determined to try whether he or she was the cleverest, and he only wished she would once more look in upon me when he was present, but that she never did. In short, he regarded me scientifically in the light of a patient, and at once exercised his professional skill and gratified his natural benevolence by a course of cordial and attentive treatment. One evening, the 1st in December, I was walking by myself in the carré. It was 6 o'clock. The class doors were closed, but within, the pupils, rampant in the license of evening recreation, were counterfeiting a miniature chaos. The carré was quite dark, except a red light shining under and about the stove. The wide glass doors and the long windows were frosted over, a crystal sparkle of starlight, here and there spangling this blanched winter veil, and breaking with scattered brilliance the paleness of its embroidery, proved it a clear night, though moonless. That I should dare to remain thus alone in darkness showed that my nerves were regaining a healthy tone. I thought of the nun, but hardly feared her, though the staircase was behind me, leading up, through blind black night, from landing to landing, to the haunted grenier. Yet I own my heart quaked, my pulse leaped, when I suddenly heard breathing and rustling, and turning, saw in the deep shadow of the steps a deeper shadow still, a shape that moved and descended. It paused a while at the class door, and then it glided before me. Simultaneously came a clangour of the distant door-bell. Lifelike sounds bring lifelike feelings. This shape was too round and low for my gaunt nun. It was only Madame Beck on duty. "Mademoiselle Lucy!" cried Rosine, bursting in, lamp in hand, from the corridor. "On est là pour vous au salon." Madame saw me, I saw Madame, Rosine saw us both. There was no mutual recognition. I made straight for the salon. There I found what I own I anticipated I should find, Dr. Bretton, but he was in evening dress. "The carriage is at the door," said he. "My mother has sent it to take you to the theatre. She was going herself, but an arrival has prevented her. She immediately said, 'Take Lucy in my place.' Will you go?" "Just now? I am not dressed," cried I, glancing despairingly at my dark merino. "You have half an hour to dress. I should have given you notice, but I only determined on going since 5 o'clock, when I heard there was to be a genuine regale in the presence of a great actress." And he mentioned a name that thrilled me, a name that, in those days, could thrill Europe. It is hushed now, its once restless echoes are all still. She who bore it went years ago to her rest, night and oblivion long since closed above her. But then her day, a day of Sirius, stood at its full height, light and fervour. "I'll go, I will be ready in 10 minutes," I vowed, and away I flew, never once checked, reader, by the thought which perhaps at this moment checks you, namely, that to go anywhere with Graham, and without Mrs. Bretton, could be objectionable. I could not have conceived, much less have expressed to Graham, such thought, such scruple, without risk of exciting a tyrannous self-contempt, of kindling an inward fire of shame so quenchless and so devouring that I think it would soon have licked up the very life in my veins. Besides, my godmother, knowing her son, and knowing me, would as soon have thought of chaperoning a sister with a brother, as of keeping anxious guard over our incomings and outgoings. The present was no occasion for showy array. My dun mist crape would suffice, and I sought the same in the great oak wardrobe in the dormitory, where hung no less than 40 dresses. But there had been changes and reforms, and some innovating hand had pruned this same crowded wardrobe, and carried divers garments to the grenier, my crape amongst the rest. I must fetch it. I got the key, and went aloft, fearless, almost thoughtless. I unlocked the door, I plunged in. The reader may believe it or not, but when I thus suddenly entered, that garret was not wholly dark as it should have been. From one point there shone a solemn light, like a star, but broader. So plainly it shone, that it revealed the deep alcove with a portion of the tarnished scarlet curtain drawn over it. Instantly, silently, before my eyes, it vanished. So did the curtain and alcove. All that end of the garret became black as night. I ventured no research. I had not time nor will. Snatching my dress, which hung on the wall, happily, near the door, I rushed out, relocked the door with convulsed haste, and darted downwards to the dormitory. But I trembled too much to dress myself. Impossible to arrange hair or fasten hooks and eyes with such fingers, so I called Rosine and bribed her to help me. Rosine liked a bribe, so she did her best, smoothed and plaited my hair as well as a coiffeur would have done, placed the lace collar mathematically straight, tied the neck ribbon accurately, in short, did her work like the neat-handed Phyllis she could be when she chose. Having given me my handkerchief and gloves, she took the candle and lighted me downstairs. After all, I had forgotten my shawl. She ran back to fetch it, and I stood with Dr. John in the vestibule, waiting. "What is this, Lucy?" said he, looking down at me narrowly. "Here is the old excitement. Ha, the nun again!" But I utterly denied the charge. I was vexed to be suspected of a second delusion. He was sceptical. "She has been, as sure as I live," said he. "Her figure, crossing your eyes, leaves on them a peculiar gleam and expression, not to be mistaken." "She has not been," I persisted, for indeed I could deny her apparition with truth. "The old symptoms are there," he affirmed. "A particular pale, and what the Scotch call a raised look." He was so obstinate, I thought it better to tell him what I really had seen. Of course with him it was held to be another effect of the same cause. It was all optical illusion, nervous malady, and so on. Not one bit did I believe him, but I dared not contradict. Doctors are so self-opinionated, so immovable in their dry materialist views. Rosine brought the shawl, and I was bundled into the carriage. The theatre was full, crammed to its roof. Royal and noble were there. Palace and hotel had emptied their inmates into those tiers so thronged and so hushed. Deeply did I feel myself privileged in having a place before that stage. I longed to see a being of whose powers I had heard reports, which made me conceive peculiar anticipations. I wondered if she would justify her renown. With strange curiosity, with feelings severe and austere, yet of riveted interest, I waited. She was a study of such nature as had not encountered my eyes yet. A great and new planet she was, but in what shape? I waited her rising. She rose at 9 that December night. Above the horizon I saw her come. She could shine yet with pale grandeur and steady might, but that star verged already on its judgment day. Seen near, it was a chaos, hollow, half consumed, an orb perished or perishing, half lava, half glow. I had heard this woman termed plain, and I expected bony harshness and grimness, something large, angular, sallow. What I saw was the shadow of a royal Vashti, a queen, fair as the day once, turned pale now like twilight, and wasted like wax in flame. For a while, a long while, I thought it was only a woman, though an unique woman, who moved in might and grace before this multitude. By and by I recognized my mistake. Behold, I found upon her something neither of woman nor of man. In each of her eyes sat a devil. These evil forces bore her through the tragedy, kept up her feeble strength, for she was but a frail creature, and as the action rose and the stir deepened, how wildly they shook her with their passions of the pit! They wrote hell on her straight, haughty brow. They tuned her voice to the note of torment. They writhed her regal face to a demoniac mask. Hate and murder and madness incarnate she stood. It was a marvelous sight, a mighty revelation. It was a spectacle low, horrible, immoral. Swordsmen thrust through, and dying in their blood on the arena sand, bulls goring horses disemboweled, made a meeker vision for the public, a milder condiment for a people's palate, than Vashti torn by 7 devils, devils which cried saw and rent the tenement they haunted, but still refused to be exorcised. Suffering had struck that stage empress, and she stood before her audience neither yielding to, nor enduring, nor, in finite measure, resenting it. She stood locked in struggle, rigid in resistance. She stood, not dressed, but draped, in pale antique folds, long and regular, like sculpture. A background and entourage and flooring of deepest crimson threw her out, white like alabaster, like silver, rather be it said, like death. Where was the artist of the Cleopatra? Let him come and sit down and study this different vision. Let him seek here the mighty brawn, the muscle, the abounding blood, the full-fed flesh he worshipped. Let all materialists draw nigh and look on. I have said that she does not resent her grief. No, the weakness of that word would make it a lie. To her, what hurts becomes immediately embodied. She looks on it as a thing that can be attacked, worried down, torn in shreds. Scarcely a substance herself, she grapples to conflict with abstractions. Before calamity she is a tigress. She rends her woes, shivers them in convulsed abhorrence. Pain for her has no result in good. Tears water no harvest of wisdom. On sickness, on death itself, she looks with the eye of a rebel. Wicked perhaps she is, but also she is strong, and her strength has conquered beauty, has overcome grace, and bound birth at her side, captives peerlessly fair, and docile as fair. Even in the uttermost frenzy of energy is each Maenad movement royally, imperially, exceedingly upborne. Her hair flying loose in revel or war is still an angel's hair, and glorious under a halo. Fallen, insurgent, banished, she remembers the heaven where she rebelled. Heaven's light, following her exile, pierces its confines, and discloses their forlorn remoteness. Place now the Cleopatra, or any other slug, before her as an obstacle, and see her cut through the pulpy mass as the scimitar of Saladin clove the down cushion. Let Paul Peter Rubens wake from the dead, let him rise out of his cerements, and bring into this presence all the army of his fat women, the Magian power or prophet virtue gifting that slight rod of Moses, could at one waft release and remingle a sea spell parted, whelming the heavy host with the downrush of overthrown sea ramparts. Vashti was not good, I was told, and I have said she did not look good. Though a spirit, she was a spirit out of Tophet. Well, if so much of unholy force can arise from below, may not an equal efflux of sacred essence descend one day from above? What thought Dr. Graham of this being? For long intervals I forgot to look how he demeaned himself, or to question what he thought. The strong magnetism of genius drew my heart out of its wonted orbit. The sunflower turned from the south to a fierce light, not solar, a rushing red cometary light, hot on vision and to sensation. I had seen acting before, But never anything like this, never anything which astonished hope and hushed desire, which outstripped impulse and paled conception, which, instead of merely irritating imagination with the thought of what might be done, at the same time fevering the nerves because it was not done, disclosed power like a deep, swollen winter river, thundering in cataract, and bearing the soul like a leaf on the steep and steely sweep of its descent. End of section 38. Recording by Leanne Fortune.